Hello and welcome to The Pickle, brought to you by AC4SA, Academic Coaching for Student Athletes, and co-hosted by Ethan O'Day and Jack Sundberg. Here on The Pickle, we discuss with our guests, ranging from coaches to professional athletes, the pickle of all things, academics, sports, recruiting, high school to the pros, you name it, we talk about it. Our goal for the podcast is to give people insight into the sports world and student athletes' perspectives by sharing current and former athletes, educators, and coaches' real-life experiences. Telling story is one of the most powerful means for leaders to influence, teach, and inspire. These stories resonate in our culture, history, and lesson learned. The Pickle brings you these stories of adversity, triumph, failure, and determination to get inspired, to take them to your school, home, life, and court. Listen, learn, share, and enjoy. Today's guest is Lindsey Barrera from Beaumont, Texas. Lindsey played high school softball in Texas, where she was an all-state player. From there, she went to play for the University of Texas, the Longhorns, where she was Big 12 Commissioner's Honor Roll, an All-Big 12 Conference player, as well as playing in the College World Series. She was a two-time All-American and a Team USA invitee. Lindsey Barrera, welcome to The Pickle.
Here we go, The Pickle Pod. We're back and we're better. Super excited for our guest today. Think she's gonna have a lot of great insight playing at a big-time school, playing softball, an all Big 12 first team, all defensive team, was in the College World Series, Team USA invitee, and two-time All-American, Lindsey Barrera. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited.
Lindsey, I think you're going to be great to have on, Texas Longhorn.
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em, baby. I think you're probably one of our first guests from really like a really down south school. So I think you're going to have some really great insight, academics, athletics, all of it. I know you're an avid listener of the Pickle Pod. So as you know, we started off with 5 rapid fire questions. Everyone gets to know you a little bit better. So Ethan, take her away.
All right, here we go. Dinner with one athlete.
My husband, does that count? He's an athlete.
I like that.
Ask the
Shout out
test.
Trace.
That's a great answer.
That is a
Number
great
one
answer.
thing on the bucket list.
To go to Thailand. I have a crazy obsession with elephants. Elephants in Thailand seem to be nicer than Africa, apparently. So,
You've done your research. Yeah.
I have, yeah, but not like the bad elephant farms, like the good ones.
Gotcha.
Yeah, naturally.
Exactly.
Favorite movie of all time.
I have a weird obsession with Avatar, like the blue people, the tall blue people.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's an unbelievable movie. How do you start your day every morning?
Breakfast. Yeah. Every morning, can't miss it. Cranky, hangry, I gotta have it.
Love it.
All right, and last question. First quote that comes to mind.
Closed mouths don't get fed. That's probably like my favorite quote, probably the most that gets to my husband's nerves. Just because if you don't ask for things in life, you may or may not ever get them. So closed mouths just don't get fed.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
There it is. That's it. That's the
Easy as that.
we can keep it
All
rolling.
All right, bye guys.
I just got really distracted because my dog just came into the room. That's why I paused, by the way.
Oh, what kind? Wait, we have to see the dog.
He's a husky.
Oh.
I can show you him after.
He's actually psychotic. We can always, we're good. So we'll just sort of dive right in. I think that obviously Texas is like top tier of the top tier. I mean, Texas Longhorns. I mean, I don't know anybody around the country that doesn't know Texas Longhorn. Okay. So, but at the same time, it's a really high level of academics and your top tier sports. So talk a little bit about just coming in freshman year, managing both. Some ways that you struggled at the beginning and then maybe towards the end, or maybe right away you found success managing both, figuring out how it all works.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act because like you said, not only are you expected, when you come in as a student athlete, you're expected to be a great athlete, but you're expected to be a great student first. So you have to figure it out when you first get there. And of course you have, being on a team, you have that camaraderie to kind of guide you through that path. But one of the things that I struggled with my freshman year was, I mean, coming, throughout high school, oh, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, all these things. But when you start college, you don't just have study, right? You have to be able to study and play the game. You have to be the best at both crafts. And so I had to really take a reality check and, say, okay, what is something that I'm truly passionate about? And, I think even athletes to this day, especially female athletes, our sport only goes so far, which is unfortunate. But I learned that the hard way. So you really have to find two passions. You love softball because you're in college for softball. That's, how you're funded to play and go to school. But you have to find something else that you're truly passionate about in education wise, and that you want to study, and that you're okay to stay up till 2 a.m. studying and know you have 6 a.m., 5 a.m. practice the next day. So freshman year, I actually bounced around. I was like, oh, I'm going to be in chemistry. I'm going to be a nurse, like nursing. And like, I remember I went to one chem class and I had no idea what the professor was saying. It was like not my language. And I ended up dropping it because you have a certain amount of drops within a certain window. And so right. I think that's okay. And I think that's something that I think athletes and students coming in freshman year, it's okay to kind of, you're there to figure out who you need to be, who you want to be, what you're passionate about. But one thing I would recommend if I were to tell my younger self is to dabble in high school, have internships if you can, do some job shadowing just to have a better idea of something else that you're passionate about. So that way, when you get to college, you've already done that. You're like, okay, I've already practiced in the hospital. I've already gone to the soup kitchen or vet, whatever that is. So then when you get to college, you know what you're passionate about. And then it becomes less of that identification crisis as you kind of work your way through there. So I eventually found it, which is great, but it was a little struggle when I first went in. So
yeah. And Ethan, you can take it from here, but about just, we have a lot of, and especially we had a female athlete come on who was Team USA basketball, and that was one of her big things, right, Ethan? Finding your identity, who you are, stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, I think, there's so many good points you made there too. Like as female athletes, you get less recognition, and that's the way it goes. And you have to think about, and that's something I always thought too, as a student athlete in college. I'm like, talking to girls basketball players, I'm like, they don't get as many fans of the game. And like, it's honestly hard. It's tougher for female athletes to go through what they do because they don't get as much recognition at most schools. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. So I think that's like a great point that you made, and you have to like wear that on your shoulder and make start figuring out what you need to do. But that's for everyone. And I really like what you said about high school, like internships, finding out what you want to do in life. And when was it? I forgot to say this in your intro. You obviously do a lot of marketing stuff now with nonprofits, awesome community work. When did you kind of find your passion through that? Was it in college? Or kind of after?
Yeah, so it was actually in college. So as I realized that the medical field probably was going to be for me, one thing that seemed kind of like a dumb moment was, sports. It was like, okay, the one thing that's my passion is softball, it's sports. It gave so much to me throughout my life. I played all sports growing up. It's giving my education. It's allowed me to travel. So how do I give back to sports? How do I get back into the sports industry or the fitness industry, something that I know so well? And so I end up landing my degree in sport management. And after college, the last year of my sport management degree was marketing focused. And I was like, wow, I love this. So after I graduated college, I got my master's degree in marketing. And so my senior year, I actually did an internship with a fitness company called Hyperwear. They make fitness equipment. And we did a lot of work with schools. And so they sell sand bells, and you've probably used them. But we partnered with schools around Texas and tried to build up their PE program to get kids moving, and there were activities and kind of camps that we put on with them. And I was like, this is what I love. Like, it just makes sense. I'm still in sports, I'm still moving, I'm still in fitness, but I'm marketing. I'm doing something I love and getting paid for it. And so that kind of transition into this really a cool opportunity with She Is Sports, which is a nonprofit foundation that really focuses on increasing the awareness of women's professional sports. And along with that is making sure the generation to come know that if they want to play women's sports, if they want to work in women's sports, that they have opportunities. So we partner with, all of the women's professional sports leagues, WNBA, NWSL, and we purchase tickets from them because it's one of the hardest things. It's kind of like a sick cycle. You want to help them get more butts in seats. So some organizations go to the WNBA and say, hey, can you give us tickets? But it's like, WNBA is probably a bad example because they're doing really good right now. But let's say it's a professional lacrosse team, give us tickets. They're like, we actually need you to pay for the tickets because we need the funding. So, we could pay our players and stuff. So partnering with like Adidas and companies like that, we would purchase tickets from those professional leagues. And then we would reach out to youth organizations and bring those kids to the game so they could see that there is a future in women's sports, whatever avenue that is.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's awesome. I think She Is Sports, didn't really know too much about them prior to this, but I think, that's all awesome stuff. And I think, like Ethan was saying, women's sports and college athletics, you guys are doing everything that the males are doing, if not more. And so to go out there and then show up and do everything that the men are doing with maybe less fans in the stands or maybe not all the priorities that males get. I mean, we saw the whole NCAA, women's tournament this year. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
And our next question was actually, you kind of went right into it. A lot of the times we talk about with our student athletes, because we work with kids who are going D3, D1, and you're so hyper-focused on your sport. You want to win a championship. You want to start. And then so often, even guys who I played with, Trace, finishing up their careers are like, okay, what's next? Or you get to your senior year and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I want to do. So I think emphasizing, like you said, get in high school, see what works, see what you like, what you don't like.
Yeah.
Because then when you get to college, it's like, well, now I have this great opportunity at the University of Texas to take a major that actually matters. And it seems like you did that. Whereas me and maybe Ethan and other people, it's tough. Talk a little bit about that more, because we work so often with kids and they're like, I want to play in the NBA. I want to do this. It's like, it's okay to have two things that you're really interested in. It's like, there's not, maybe your buddy might make fun of you or your girlfriend, but it's okay to be passionate about more than one thing.
Yeah. And I think what's really important to note on that, for absolutely everyone, every single person, it ends. At some point it ends. You cannot, there are no professional athletes 180, playing, their sports still. Maybe Tom Brady. He's like the only one.
That's the only thing I was gonna say.
But even for him, it's gonna come to an end. And at some point, you're gonna have to have something else that you want to wake up for every single morning. And being a professional athlete is not the only avenue to success. There's, what's the stat? Like 2% of people,
it's ridiculous.
Professional athletes. So it's like the 98% of the rest of the world has to find something else that makes them happy. And so whether it's tomorrow or in 50 years, you still have to have something that inspires you. So take that time and, do the work. You can't just say, okay, it's done and expect something to fall in your lap. So I have, even after college, I had friends who, were great athletes, and really had an identity crisis when softball ended. It was like they were different people because they had no idea what to do next. It was like, they say, do what you love. Softball was what I loved, and now it's gone. And that's unfortunate because then you just get stuck in this dark place almost, but there's so much more to life than sports. And so I just think it's really important that you put in the work ahead of time before you're faced at that crossroads and it's gone and you have no choice. And then you're scrambling at that point.
Right.
100%. Yeah. That's like, every athlete is going to go through that identity crisis when it's over. It's inevitable, right? But if you are able to explore other things and have yourself set up to have other things that you can transition to, I think it helps you out a lot. But it's a process that everyone does have to go through. It's a scary, daunting thing for sure. But what I wanted to ask you as a follow-up to that too is going to a school like Texas, Big 12 school. I was in Austin actually this past spring, and I was walking on the campus, and I was like, I could not imagine going to this school. Just how big, like Austin, amazing big city. Sports is the number one thing in that school for a lot of different sports, like a lot of expectations. Academically, really good school. What was that like coming in as a freshman? Was it like a huge transition with academics and sports and just all the pressures that coming with playing Division I softball at that level?
Yeah, so it was definitely a transition. It's always really funny to me because I'm from Texas. I'm from an area an hour east of Houston, Texas, and I did not want to go to school in Texas. Like, didn't want it. I was like, nope, don't want to be in this state. Like, West Coast, like the Northeast, like wherever. And I was a late commit. Like, I was the last commit in my class, and I went on this like last minute trip to Texas, and absolutely fell in love. I was like, wow, this is so awesome. It's so diverse. It's big town. It's a big city, but small city. It was just, I fell in love. And so with that definitely came with, okay, I'm in Texas, I'm from Texas. So now I have to live up to the Texas Longhorn kind of mecca that has been created. And so there was definitely always, I remember, it's interesting, your freshman year, I think that's scary for everyone, whether it's high school, college, your rookie year professionally, you have to get your feet wet, right? And so you want to be perfect in school. You don't want to be, I remember we had mentors who would come to all the classes and take roll to make sure all the student athletes were in class. And then if you weren't in class, then they would go tell your coach. And so students were in class. Yeah, like you were being monitored. So, just kind of being that student athlete and being the face, not only, going to a school like Texas, your athletes are known, some more than others. Of course, softball compared to football, walk in the park, right? But you're still the face of the program. And so you are just expected to do things at a different level than one would say your average student. And so not only are you expected to carry yourself, you have to act a certain way, you have to dress a certain way, you have to, your study and your grades and everything from community service that we had to being in study hall. The spotlight is on you, but it's a good spotlight and it's a fun spotlight. And one thing that I think so much from my experience, not just at Texas, but I think sports overall, it catapulted me into my professional career, not as an athlete, but as a businesswoman. It absolutely prepared me for what are my expectations, how I'm supposed to carry myself, how to manage time management, and follow up on projects, whatever it may be. So it was a great experience. The spotlight was on, the pressure was on, but it's needed. It was definitely needed.
Absolutely. We had a coach come on a couple of weeks ago, and he said, it might be the hardest 4 years of your life, but it's also probably going to be the most rewarding 4 years of your life. From going to the College World Series, becoming an All-American, and getting invited to Team USA. And I think so often, student athletes in high school, they're like, okay, yeah, it's going to go on forever. But maybe you have 4 years of it after that. And then you're only like, 22, 23. And then maybe you'll never play that organized sport at that high level. You can play pickup here and there, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about just finding the right fit at a university, because maybe some kids and some folks might not have, at a big mecca university like Texas, they might have not had found success there. Maybe if they went to a smaller school. Talk a little bit about the importance of finding the fit academically and athletically, because I'm sure, I came in at UConn with 12 kids and we ended with 5. I'm sure Trace had a similar experience at Texas. So it's at the same time, it's like you want to find a place that you're going to have success in.
Yeah. And I'm going to go one step further, because mine was more than just education wise and sports wise, but also where I was comfortable and where I felt like home, especially being a Black woman. And so my first offer for sports was at Utah State. And I went on a visit there and I was like stars over the moon. I was like, I'm committing, like, this is where I'm going, like 100%. My parents were like, whoa, like they just offered you, like, let's sleep on it a little bit.
The first one.
Yeah, I was super stoked. And then I remember like my mom asked me questions like, "We're gonna get your hair done," or like just things that like Black girls just kind of have to think about. And I was like, oh crap, you're right. Like I have no one out here who looks like me or who could relate to me, or if anything were to happen, of course I could fall back on my softball team, my community, whatever it is. But would I really just feel like I was at home, if I went so far away where I can't even, like, it's flights away from my parents, like 2 flights. And so not only I think education, of course, is important and a team that you want to play for, but also where you feel like you have your own little community where you could thrive and grow. And one of the things that was super important to me is that I wanted diversity. I didn't want everyone to not look like me, and I didn't want everyone to look like me. I wanted everything so I could learn from other cultures, other people. And so Austin, when I got there, it gave me that. I had a place to get my hair done. I had all these different backgrounds of friends, had a great city, had a great education, sports, background. I was like, all right, well, check mark there. And then when I met the softball team, and I, met the coaches and the type of women who I'd be competing with, that was a deal done. And so I think it's so much more, especially picking a university, because that is where you will literally grow night and day in college. Like the person I was freshman year is not the same person that I was my senior year. And I think a lot of where you go to college molds who you become later on in life. And so I wanted a university that kind of molded me into this person who was open to other people's thoughts and experiences, and I could learn something that I already, that I didn't know. And so once I had that, everyone knows Texas has a great education. It's hard as hell to get in. They take the top to the top. You have to have the grades. So when I could pair that community with the sports, it was a done deal for me.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think the social aspect is such a huge part. I mean, you can only put in so many hours in softball and you can only study so much. And then you're left with this community, and sometimes it's not a city like Austin. Maybe you're in the middle of nowhere like UConn. And it's like, you got to look around. It's like, is this somewhere that I'm going to fit in? And it goes a long way. I mean, because it's your day-to-day life. And like you said, in 4 years, that could be somewhere as you come in 18, when you leave when you're 22, you're a totally different person.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times we talk about being a student athlete. It's really hard, and there's a lot of rigors to it. There's a lot of ups and downs. And not everybody's on full scholarship. Softball and baseball, full scholarships aren't really a thing, partial here, partial there. And sports all over the place. Everyone thinks I'm going to go get a full ride. I mean, unless you're really football, basketball, it's probably not as likely. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it's not as likely. So a lot of student athletes are like, well, why would I go even play at the next level? And you touched upon a little bit earlier. You said about, it molded me who I became, the businesswoman I am, the person I am. So talk a little bit about the value of the sport and the power of it, in your life and how it's affected you.
Yeah. So from, being in marketing and kind of talking with a lot of C-suite people and the people who've hired me, it's funny because a lot of the conversations that I have is when they get a resume and it says student athlete, or I went to this university and I participated in sports to some degree, they're like, interview pile, here we go. Because I know for sure that person has a work ethic, that they have time management, they know how to have responsibilities and deliver. They know how to communicate, they know how to do teamwork, they know how to work individually because they have to be better for the team. It's all these little miniature things that everyone looks for in an ideal worker, and an ideal employee. And so definitely understand, like, well, if it's partial, it's, just the same resume build that you are trying to prepare for college is the same thing. What you do in college is going to help you what you do after college. And so that being an athlete and kind of having all of those required responsibilities is it literally catapults you and puts you in front of others, because you've proven yourself for 4 years that you're more than capable of, you know, showing up every day to the job and doing the job, you know, better than others. So definitely recommend that.
Yeah, and it helps when, you know, you have All-American on there and USA.
Doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. So our last question for you here is, and again, you're ahead of us all the time. This is what I expected out of you, though. If you had one piece of advice to give to your younger self, you know, going back in time, when you were in high school, before you went through the whole recruiting process, Texas, what would be a piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Oof.
It's always a tough one.
That is a tough one. And I would definitely say, like how I kind of gave the piece of advice already about trying to find another passion in high school. I had the identity crisis moment to some degree. I found my way. I was in business. I always had a job in marketing and stuff. But when softball ended for me, I still had the identity crisis. And then I second guessed every other choice I made after that. I was like, well, what if marketing's not right for me? Like, well, maybe I should still be playing softball, or maybe I should have done nursing in college, or I just wasn't 100% certain. And I think it's because, again, I consumed all growing up. I was neck deep in softball. Like, that's all I did. And I have no regrets it got me to where I am now, but my only regret is, you know, not just giving other things opportunity education wise. I remember going back and sometimes I'm like, okay, I got to finish this paper so I can go play softball. I got to do my homework so I can go to this tournament. It was always so I can go do something else, instead of being like, no, I need to dive into this paper so I could understand what I'm writing about. And maybe this is something that I would absolutely love to, you know, dabble with later in life. So just putting the thing that will never end, your brain, your education, your knowledge, something that you can have internally make you happy, that will never go away. So just putting more my time and love there, and then being like, oh, softball, I get that. That's a cool add-on.
Right. No, it's absolutely. And it's, like I said earlier, it's like you're so hyper-focused and locked in on what your sport is in college. And so most of the time you're not even doing it. There's time to do other things, but it's like, then all you're thinking about softball or baseball or where I gotta be, right? I got to lift at 5:30, you know.
Yeah, let me go to the cage, get some extra cuts in. Like,
yeah. It's like, you don't need that. I mean, it's good. It's good. But I definitely think, a lot of our athletes who come on, you know, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, lacrosse, everyone has very similar responses. It's like, if I could find something else earlier, it would have been great, because maybe the identity crisis wouldn't have happened so bad, you know, because then I'm still know myself as strong, committed, loyal, you know, whatever it is.
And just to add on that, even, I know we talk about like when the sport ends, like people have that identity crisis, but also as you are in, let's say you play in college, or let's say you play professionally, there are times where the pressure is so on, you need a distraction. And so many people are just like, I just wish I had something else. I just wish I could go do this passion and just take my mind away from it, because this is just so stressful. It's, you know, it's running me down, and I need something to take my mind off of this every day, because eventually it becomes a job, right? And so whether you're still in it, whether it ends, at some point you're going to be faced of, what is my other passion when the sports stop? When I leave the field at night, what can I do? When I leave the field for good, what can I do? It will always, you know, kind of confront you at some point.
Yeah, no, it always does. Everyone thinks it doesn't happen, but it always does. It always. Lindsey, thanks so much for coming on. You crushed it as expected. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. If you ever need me, let me know. I am always here.
Thanks for tuning in to The Pickle. who is brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, whose goal is to use the power of sport to unleash the athlete's potential in the academic arena.